Kelsey and I have not spoken about our falling out since it happened.
I'm sweating already.
And I said, hey, let's do it on a podcast. This is Kelsey. For anybody that doesn't know,
Hello.
Kelsey is my best friend. She is also really the first employee of Life's a Joke. And as awkward as this might be to talk about, because we have not spoken about it since it happened.
I don't even remember what year it was.
I think it was 2021. Because
okay.
2021. I think it is a great conversation because I think it's relatable in the sense that whenever you have Kelsey and I have been best friends since high school. And I think anytime you have somebody in your life, whether it be a partner or a friend or whoever the fuck, and you start and you grow and you're together for a long period of time, it is very rare that both people are going to grow at the same rate, in the same direction and in the same way. Most people kind of grow apart. And Kelsey and I grew apart. And the easiest thing that we could have done was stay apart. And we worked towards coming back together. And I don't think we've ever really talked about it. And we're going to dissect
Dive
it.
Right in.
Literally last night, Kelsey and I had dinner and she's like, do you have like an idea of how you want to do this? And I'm like, no, we're just going to
wing it.
Yeah, we're going to wing it. And I think it's been long enough now that we can reflect. It's always hard when I talk about things that are in the past because my present judgment gets in the way. But I think that we have to just remember like the time that we were in and why we felt the way that we felt.
Yeah. And I feel like also we're so good now and we're so past it that like we'll be able to reflect. Also, we have both the dogs here. I don't know if you can see, but if at any point it just gets like we abruptly end this, it's because Willa needs to go in timeout. I'm going to give my little rough spiel of Kelsey and I, and you can interject at any point. So Kelsey and I met first day of freshman year of high school. At the lockers. Our last names are alphabetically next to each other, so our lockers are right next to each other.
And Kelsey helped me open my locker. And I think important context here too is that we went to a private school in a town that I didn't live. Kelsey lived in the town that we went to school.
Yep.
So Kelsey knew people at this school, whereas I did not know anyone. I did know, that's another fucking podcast episode. I did know one person who was my childhood best friend who then just one day stopped being my best friend, and she was there. So I was also going through that anxiety of not having her anymore as a best friend, and she kind of acted like I didn't really exist, and she found her own new friends, and I really needed to make friends. And Kelsey, I thought she was so cool because she knew so many people, and I'm like, that's definitely a great person to become friends with, is like somebody that's already kind of knows the lay of the land and knows. I didn't even know my way around this town. I didn't know around my way around any of these people, and Kelsey knew all of that. So Kelsey and I became best friends first day. We got very close very, very quickly.
Yeah.
We shared the same group of friends. There was a crew of us, guys and girls. And
we also both made varsity cheerleading freshman year, so we were always together because there was practice, and that also kind of created a little group in itself.
Yeah. She was another, I think actually you were probably the reason why I did cheerleading, because I did an episode about this, but I was a gymnast, so I naturally fucking hated cheerleaders. But Kelsey was a cheerleader and I liked her. So I was like, all right, maybe it's not that bad. And I also needed to make friends. I needed to be social. And I knew that I'd rather do cheerleading than do nothing. And I ended up falling in love with it. So
also with our school being so small, you like had to do something.
Yeah, totally. So, we cheered together. I think probably the first time our relationship started to change was when I got into a relationship, and that was our senior year.
Yeah.
Senior year. Yeah. actually like right off the September
immediately
of senior year.
Yeah.
I got into a relationship that progressed so fast. It was my first love. It was just like my first time experiencing a whirlwind of romantic feelings towards somebody. So I was obsessed.
I also think it's important to note that he was in a completely different grade.
Yes.
So like we didn't have the same friend group. Once you started dating him, it was like 2 years.
2 years younger than me. So then of course that person became my life, and I naturally molded to his friend group and his life. I think that was probably the first time that we started slipping away.
Which I think is, looking back at it, it's like so natural. And that's just what happens when you get into your first relationship. I just think that the reason why we started slipping was just his friend group was so vastly different because of the age. And we also had another friend who then started kind of dating somebody in his friend group. So then you guys would always hang out. So it was like there was a little bit of a divide almost.
You definitely become a little bit of an opportunist when it comes with friends in your first strong relationship, because you want the people in that person's life to like you.
Totally.
And that was a priority of mine. And to be honest, I didn't fucking like them. They were terrible people. Like a lot of these, well, that was actually a big issue in our relationship too, is that my ex, who I will always speak very highly of, and we were fucking young. I mean, I was at this point, 17, and he was fucking 15. Like we were children. But he was very much a people pleaser. And that's a really hard trait to have in a relationship, when the people pleasing is more fixated on everybody else and not the person you're in a relationship with. If you want to people please with the person you're in a relationship with,
people please me, great.
Iconic. Yeah, people please me all day. But he had, again, child actor, all of these friends for the most part went to the public school that was in the town that we were in, and they fucking hated me.
These girls were ruthless.
Yeah, they were. This was like This was my first time with like I dealt with people in my grade at my school being fucking assholes. Like there are still some of them, and they're still fucking assholes. And they would. We went to a fucking small Catholic school.
I think our graduating class was like 100 people. Yeah, like it was small in comparison to some high schools.
You like anytime people talk about like, oh, I went to school with some petty people. I'm like, you don't know petty until you went to a small Catholic school, because there's nothing else to fucking do besides just absolutely tear everybody apart. And everybody has Catholic guilt, so they take it out on everybody else. And you're trying to find yourself, but you're also being told what to do and what to believe so young. And
a really good example of our school is when Pretty Little Liars was a thing, and like we
literally
notes. Had an A. Like people were leaving notes on people's lockers, just like talking shit about each other in the bathroom, writing on the mirror with lipstick. Like it was rough.
People were writing about like, I think it had to do with me and my relationship stuff. Yeah. And then again, my ex at the time was number 20 on the sports teams. And I will never forget that fucking hockey game.
Oh, yeah.
That hockey game where I showed up and I opened the doors and everybody was cheering, hey, 20, your girl's not funny. And they were they were, because they were the public school. Yeah. They were younger. I also was just the weird all that girl. I took the guy that like is great. It was
they were threatened at the end of the day. Like let's be real. You were older, you were hot, you were cool. Well, at the time.
Maybe at the time. But he was also a great catch, and I think a lot of girls liked him. That was a big part of our issue too, was that I kept trying to explain, and this is what drives me fucking nuts, is that when a straight guy talks about girls of like, oh, she's so nice. A straight woman being nice to a straight man does not mean she's nice. How she treats other women is like, of course she's nice to you. She wants to fucking suck your dick. Like that was such a hard thing I could not get through his fucking brain. Yeah. And we struggled a lot. So anyway, that was the first point where Kelsey and I started to kind of drift away. I also I think about how I felt in the moment, and part of it is like I probably ostracized myself, but I remember feeling ostracized because I was dating a younger guy, and the other people that were in our extended group of friends that were really just our frenemies would make comments about like me dating someone younger. So I think I just stayed away from all of you.
Yeah.
Because I just assumed that all of you thought that I was weird and dating the younger guy.
Yeah. Which like 2 years, like let's be real.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's just so dumb. Like when you're younger,
it is.
What people think and what they say. It's like ridiculous.
So we started drifting apart at that point. And I will say our relationship was really never the same for years.
Yeah.
Because I ended up going to Emerson. And a huge reason why was because my ex was still in school and I did not want to go too far. So I was willing to kind of go to any school that was nearby. And I didn't get into fucking BU or Northeastern, which I'm still fucking
rude,
bitter about
dude.
that. I had a fucking 4.0. Like, what the fuck? So anyway, Emerson ended up being great and very much in alignment with what I fucking do now. But I go to Emerson and I spend pretty much every weekend of that first year, I spent every weekend going back home, which was 15 minutes away.
Not far, yeah.
And Kelsey you went to North Carolina right at the gate?
No, I went to Rhode Island.
Right, you went to Rhode Island. Kelsey went to like 20 different colleges.
It was a moment.
Yeah. I mean, we also we did college very, very differently.
Oh, yeah.
I started off in a relationship, so I was very tame. I didn't go through the wild college years until later, whereas Kelsey out the gate went wild college girl.
Yeah, pretty much. Because I had broke up with my high school boyfriend right before we went to college. And that was kind of it.
So I went to
Rhode Island first for a year, but I was miserable because of certain someone else.
She was obsessed with this like
it's like a whole, we're not going to get into it, but it was a bizarre moment in my life. And then I transferred very weirdly to South Carolina for a year and a half.
That was like full party girl.
That was the party girl. I feel like my freshman year was a little more tame because I was so like obsessed, whatever. And then when I went to South Carolina, that school also was just such a party school, South Carolina. But that was a weird moment where I literally like came to one day. I was like, what am I doing here? Yeah. And then I went to New York.
Right.
Which was totally different. But we were never in the same state. So like we were friends, but like we didn't hang out a lot in college.
And also we didn't have social media in the way that we do now. I think I wonder if it would have been different if we...
Yeah, maybe.
There really was no...
It was like Facebook. But like we weren't...
Facebook was a hard... I don't know. I didn't feel like Facebook... I feel really... It's really easy for me to keep up with people now with social media, but I feel like Facebook wasn't really good for...
You weren't like posting in real time on Facebook or like really keeping up with people. It was just a place to like photo dump all of your like night out photos.
So Kelsey and I you came to visit me one time in college for my birthday.
Yeah, we went to Mija.
Was that my 20? I wasn't even 21 yet, I don't think, because I was still using my fake ID.
Okay, maybe. So maybe it was like maybe it was your 21st birthday, but we went out before.
Yes. Okay.
Or something like that.
Actually, I think it was because I was... Do you turn 20? Because I was with those other terrible girls that ruined my life. So it must have been 21.
Yeah.
And I remember when you came into the city, you fucked up your car in the parking garage.
And it was my brother's car. Yeah. And I parked it into I'll never forget. I parked it into a parking garage that was like, the space was right next to a wall. Yeah. And I clearly was not a very good driver. No, and I like tried to scoot into it and I like tore up the side mirror. And I was like, oops.
That was the one and only time I never visited Kelsey. Like, when we would go home for holidays, I think I would see you.
Yeah, we would hang out like just at our houses, but you didn't come visit me anywhere.
I never saw her at any college. No. I really didn't know anything that Kelsey was really doing in college. I still don't know much about your college life.
Me neither. I'm trying to forget it.
Right. Like I know you were in a sorority.
Yeah.
I know you were like in a period of like really partying and like letting loose, especially at North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then, but other than that, we really didn't have much connection at all in college.
Yeah.
When I came out to LA right after college, so right in 2015. And
that summer though, right after we had graduated, I remember before you moved to California, we were hanging out like every day. Because remember I made us those necklaces with like the dates on them?
Vaguely.
Those little like nameplate necklaces that were like our
birthdays.
God, I
do.
And like we took that photo because that was like you were leaving. But we'd hung out that whole summer, I remember.
I do remember that. Okay.
So we must have, after you graduated, I mean, we were definitely friends when we were in college, but we just weren't
keeping up with each other.
Keeping up and super close. But I think when you graduated that summer, we hung out a ton before you went back.
That makes sense too, because that will explain why when we did have our kind of big falling out, like that's kind of the buildup of what got there.
Yeah.
My issue with our friendship was when I moved out to Los Angeles, I got a group of friends, and it's sometimes hard. I think about when I've been in romantic relationships that were not meant for me. Sometimes you don't understand in the moment why they're not good for you until you get in a relationship with somebody that is good for you.
Totally.
And I feel like when I came out to California and I made friends, I started having this internal resentment towards Kelsey because I was getting treatment that I felt I never got from Kelsey. And I started toying with all of this resentment where I started wondering, like, were Kelsey and I at any point frenemies? Was it at any point you rooting against me? This was my internal feeling at the time.
Yep.
And Kelsey moved out, what, like 2 years?
2017.
Okay,
so
2
years
years out
later.
2015. I had kind of lived a full life in those 2 years because I worked so many different jobs in a short period of time. That
became your like going out era. I feel like,
that's when that's when I really like did clubs and drank and did all of that stuff. So I like had a few different friend groups. I was working different jobs, so I was meeting people. So I kind of had an established life, and I wasn't in a relationship. When Kelsey came out, Kelsey, you were dating Ian? You came out with Ian
when we moved here. Yeah, we came together.
So Kelsey is now engaged to a guy that she's known since middle
third
school.
grade.
So I've known him.
You've known him as long as you've known me.
Kelsey.
Yeah.
And one of the times that Kelsey came out to visit me before she moved out, I was like, okay, Kelsey and I have never fucking had a time besides when we were literally 15 years old, when we were like just kissing dudes. Like, we've never had a period of time where we've been able to go out and drink and get drunk and like maybe hook up with a guy, like just live our like crazy single life together. So Kelsey's coming out and I'm like, this is it. We have a week. I have
get ready.
And at this point I'm like, I'm doing Argyle on Tuesdays. I'm doing Warwick on Wednesdays.
We still did.
We did. Okay, whatever, we did. But like, this fucking bitch was basically in a relationship and like wasn't very forthcoming about that information. So in my mind, I was like, let's go. We're going to get crazy. Yeah. And also, if you know Kelsey's now fiance, like, he gets jealous about things. Like, Kelsey can't be like going out.
Not anymore.
Yes, but at the time, he was...
It was a rough moment.
He would like not be stoked if she was like doing the shit that I wanted her to do. Yeah. Essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she's fucking basically in a relationship. So we never really we do go out, we do all the things, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, she's in a fucking relationship. She's not going to fucking like go to this after party. When Kelsey moves out, she moves out with Ian, who is now her fiance. Mm-hmm. At this time, I was in a relationship, not a good relationship. And that probably impacted a lot of how I was feeling, and I'm trying to think about in that moment and remove all of that. Yeah. But I was dating somebody that I should not have been dating, and you live and you learn. And I'm sure being in a toxic relationship subconsciously, I know for a fact that I wasn't fully being myself. Yeah. I know for a fact that I was deflecting and trying to put blame on other things. But nevertheless, I was very excited for Kelsey and Ian to move out. When Kelsey moved out, Kelsey didn't know anybody. In the same way that when I went to high school, I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. So I made it my purpose to include Kelsey as much as possible, to bring her to meet at the time I had probably like 6 different
a lot of different friend groups.
Yeah. They weren't like all collectively one. And I tried to introduce her to all of them. I started feeling a lot of resentment because Kelsey would come. It's so weird to talk about this, like when you're sitting right here.
I know.
But Kelsey would come and be negative.
Yeah.
And
that's the only way to put it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
I would feel a shift of the energy in the room when Kelsey would come sometimes.
And not a good shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would feel that like she didn't want to be there. It felt like sometimes it was hard to, like, having a conversation felt like pulling teeth a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it was very, I guess I would ask or somebody would ask and Kelsey would respond, and that was kind of the end of the conversation. And I had different friends at the time pull me aside and kind of be like, hey, I don't.
Who the fuck is this bitch?
This person is not
pretty
very
much
nice to you. And I felt so much stress about it because I knew what Kelsey was like when she was great. We had this whole history. I now have this new group of friends. I feel like she's coming and she's not showing them her best self. And then that also makes me look bad.
Mm-hmm.
So then I remember when I started really getting fed up, I was like, I'm done inviting Kelsey to things. I'm just not going to invite her. But then on the flip side, when I didn't invite you, you would get mad at me and you know, rightfully so, call me out for not including her. So I felt so fucking torn all of the time of this happening. And Kelsey, during all of this, at one point decides that she's going to do content creation. This is way before I was doing content creation.
2019, I think.
Yeah. Kelsey essentially has this epiphany, and it's great. I remember we have a conversation and you talk about how you have basically had this epiphany that you've been negative and that you've been closed off and that you've been maybe rude in situations or whatever it be, and you don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I saw, like, almost overnight.
It was night and day for me too. Like I completely, I don't even remember like the moment that it happened, but I know that from one to the next, I was like a totally different person. Yeah. But I think also going back to me being negative and feeling some type of way when we were hanging out with your groups of friends, I was very different from them.
Yeah.
So I think that also played into it, that I was just jealous that like you had these amazing friends and they were so like energetic and out there, and a lot of them were actors or in the entertainment industry, and this was much before when I was very shy and like closed off. So I think it was just a projection of like, oh, I don't fit in with these people, kind of. And I think obviously looking back, I'm like, could have done it in a nicer way, but I think that was just me shutting down and being like, I want to be included, I want to be invited, I want to be a part of it, but not feeling included in a part of it even when I was there. So I think that was kind of like the piece that was hard for me, that then one day I was just like, what am I doing? Why am I being like this? Why do I feel this way?
And I think everybody relates to, when there was a period in your life or something that you're really insecure about, you become a shell of a person. And they say that sometimes like when we hate somebody or we don't like what they do, it's either because we see that trait in ourselves or because we're envious that we don't have that trait. And I think that sometimes, I think there were a lot of mirrors for you too. I also think that Kelsey probably, not to speak for you, but I think that because I was friends with a lot of actors or theatrical people that were very outgoing, that I think Kelsey thought that she had to be like very outgoing and theatrical to be included.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. And I think like that made you kind of go inward even more.
Totally. I mean, when you're in a room with people who are all super energetic and outgoing and have also known each other, I was coming in as the girl that didn't know any of these people. I only knew CHRISTINA. So then it was hard because it's like everybody also was trying to, I guess, get a piece of CHRISTINA for lack of better words, because they were all friends with her. And then I just felt like I was coming in as this like, oh, it's CHRISTINA's little friend who like lives here now, so we have to invite her kind of thing, which I know wasn't the case, but that's how I felt. I also just moved to a new state with my boyfriend. We moved across the country together, like moving in together for the first time. I had a terrible job. There was just like so many other aspects that obviously then came out in essentially the way that I was treating you and acting and, you know, just with everybody in my life too. Like it was it wasn't my proudest moment, but I think also these are the things that you kind of have to go through 100%. To A, become a better person, and also B, like figure out who you want in your life and who deserves to be there. And, you know,
and I think that's also why, like, and I'm sure, I mean, feel free to chime in about it. Like, I wasn't a perfect friend by any means. I had plenty of my issues. So I think I also felt torn because I'm like, you know, I know that I probably do things, and sometimes you were great when you'd go, and then there would be, I remember like feeling when I would pick you up before things of like, what Kelsey am I getting today? Yeah. And I remember that being causing me a lot of stress. And I'm sure the stress was more apparent because I was also in a very stressful relationship where I was also dating somebody that I didn't know what mood I was going to get. So I was just dealing with a lot of walking on eggshells. And I remember feeling when you had this epiphany, Kelsey literally overnight became a different person, like quite unrecognizable, was just so much lighter with her energy, was so much more audibly supportive of people. I remember it was the first time, like, Kelsey wasn't always really great at being audibly supportive. And you were just like very confident with doing that. And I remember that moment I felt guilty because although I had seen you grown into this awesome person, I felt so much resentment.
You were holding on to a lot.
Because I felt like now all of these people that entered, because now Kelsey was doing content creation, so she was making her friends from this. And those people who are just now coming into Kelsey's life at this chapter got to get Kelsey at this. And I had so much resentment that I didn't get Kelsey at that. And that I always felt like I was treated a little bit differently because we just had a longer history. And I remember feeling so jealous and angry when I would go on social media and see Kelsey comment on now this new group of friends that she had and be so supportive and I was like obsessive. Like I would go through and be like, she hasn't liked my last 10 posts. She hasn't said anything like this. And I remember being like, I feel so selfish for being angry because I should just be happy that you were strong and big enough to change. But I felt like I was left. I felt like you just kept moving on and growing, and we weren't
really going in that direction.
Correct.
We were staying. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any? But I know that there is something that we do want to do, whether or not we're going to feel comfortable about it. But but if there's anything before that you feel like,
I mean, I think it's just important to note, like, we became friends when we were 15, right? So like how we were when we were 15 to then 17 to 19 to 21 to 20, we're now 32, right? This happened, our like bigger falling out happened in 2021. So that's what, 4 years ago. So we were 28. Like, we're a completely different person at every stage. And it's easy to like stay friends with people because you're friends, right? I always hear that, like, oh, well, we're friends like because we've always been. But you want to obviously be friends with people who are going to then, we grow differently every day. There are things that like are so different about us, but we always come back together because we decided and realized that we wanted that. And I think the easy way out would have just been to be like, no, like, you know, I resent you for this or I resent you for that, and kind of call it a day. Like when I first moved to LA and didn't have any friends and was hanging out with you and all of your friends, and that was me projecting because I didn't even have any of my own friends. So like if Christina was doing something and she didn't invite me, I didn't do anything because like it was just me and Ian. Ian didn't have any friends. I also wasn't the type of person to want to go out and like meet friends. My sister just moved to LA a year ago. She has more friends than I do. And I've been here for like 7 years because she's the person that would just go out, go to the Pilates class, take the whatever, call somebody this. I didn't do that because I kind of came in and I was like, oh, my best friend lives there. So like, I'm just going to, you know, hang out with her. And then when it wasn't what I kind of expected, because obviously she'd been friends with these people for longer and they were just different people that I had never met, right? We grew up in a small area. So like everybody that I knew was very different from these new people that she was hanging out with. So it was like almost a culture shock for me now to see her with these people. And then I didn't have any friends. So then to revert back to what you were saying, when I then, you know, realized essentially that I was ruining my life. And I was like, okay, I need to become a better person. And then I started making new friends. I get why then you were like, well, what the fuck? Because now you're treating all of these people in the way that you wanted me to treat you. And I wasn't giving you that. And I think that was also something maybe subconscious, but in my brain, I was just like, oh, I'm at this point in my life now. So now all these new people that I meet get this version, but I've known Christina forever. So like, I don't have to try.
Totally.
Essentially. And like, that's not the right way to go about it, because you should always continue to try in your friendships.
I think we all do that with the people that are closest to us, is like, not that we take them for granted, but like, obviously we've known each other longer. We don't have to, maybe we think we don't have to try as hard.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, if you have somebody in your life for a very long time, the inevitability is you both are going to change. And you might get to a point where you don't recognize each other. And like you said about when I became friends with Kelsey, I was friends with Kelsey because proximity, right? Like, you have to make friends in it's your town, your school, your job. And then you keep having those friends. And then one day you wake up and you say, would I be this person's friend right now if we didn't have all that we had? And there was definitely points of our friendship where we were just continuing to be friends because that's all we knew.
Yeah.
And it kind of took us completely growing in opposite directions to actually become friends as adults because we wanted to, and not because we were just forced to continue to be friends. And it was not easy. And it's the work is possible if you feel like you grow away from somebody, and you have to be, I think, also accepting of the fact that I don't need Kelsey to be me, and Kelsey doesn't need me to be her. We're going to disagree. We're going to do things differently, but it's getting to relearn the people that you've grown to become, and having respect and love that you will support them in whatever they do, and then still finding your common ground. But also, like, Kelsey and I have so much common ground, but we're so different in so many ways, but we respect those differences. And if anything, I think those differences inspire us to try new things, or
I think they also make us better friends.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, you also have to, both people have to want, like, we both realized we did not want to lose this friendship.
Yeah.
And that's why it worked. It wasn't just like you begging for me or me begging for you. Like, we were both like, okay, I hear you and I don't want this to end. So how can we fix it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that's so important, because friends grow apart all the time. People always, like, friendship breakups are so real and so true, and they happen all the time, and they're quite inevitable, especially when you've met people in high school or just, 10 years ago, however long ago. Even people that are friends 2 years ago, they lose each other. And I just think it's so important that, like, if you want to put in the work and be friends with this person and they want the same thing for you, you can make it work.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how far apart you've grown. You just have to both want to come back together and realize that there are always going to be things. I feel like our communication now is like through the roof. Like, it was never.
We were both. We never both walked on eggshells for so long.
We never talked about things that bothered us. If she did something, that I didn't like, I wouldn't say anything.
And same.
And now it's like, if anything, which I don't even feel like anything's really happened, but if anything happens, I don't feel weird now being like, hey, actually, that makes me feel uncomfortable.
And now that we work together too, you have to communicate, and sometimes it's uncomfortable to communicate. But I think once you lose the communication, there's no chance for growth, because if you lose it for long enough, then you just get so afraid that if you bring something up, and do you want to read these emails?
We can. I haven't read it since I wrote it.
I haven't either.
So
I wrote Kelsey an email in 2021. We go back and forth.
Which also I was feeling like there was something off, but it did kind of catch me off guard. Yeah. Like, I remember specifically, I was feeling some type of way. I was like, ooh, I feel like Christina's been a little like weird lately.
Yeah.
And this was also when I was like so obsessed with content creation and social media, and I noticed that she hadn't watched my stories. Like
I had you muted.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
But as she hadn't watched my stories in like a week, you were back in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's weird. I was like, she's usually like one of the first names to pop up. Like, she hasn't. And then I started getting in my head because I noticed it more and more. And I was like, she either has me muted or she's purposely not looking. I was like, did she unfollow me? Whatever. And then I think I like picked you up from the airport when you came back, and we like kind of were like, oh, we should like chat.
Yeah.
And then I think you sent me the email like the next day.
Yeah. I'm also not great at I mean, I talk about it every episode. I'm trying to be better at talking about things when they happen, but I let things ruminate for so long, and then I end up holding grudges, and then I end up just not being myself because I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna watch this. Like, I do get a little petty because it's easier than having the hard conversation. And I wrote Kelsey an email, which we've all been there with our friends, where like we get to a point where we're so stressed about having a conversation. We know we have to. And I knew if I waited any longer, I was going to unleash on Kelsey.
Yeah.
And I wrote her an email, and we'll see how bad it was. But at the time, that was me trying to be responsible, because I sometimes when I know this about me, when I write things, I feel like I can convey how I feel. And sometimes if I say things and I'm too emotional, I'll either say something I don't mean and I'll hit below the belt, because I definitely do that. And I get that from my mother. I'll go below the belt, or I won't say everything I want because I feel awkward, and then
you'll second guess it after. You'll be like, oh, I should have said that.
Yeah. So I wrote Kelsey an email, and we have not read these emails. Let's find
I'm nervous. I feel like I remember the subject was like, I hope you can understand. And I just remember getting that and being like, what am I about to receive?
Let's see. I hope you can understand. It was definitely.
Was that the correct subject title?
2020. I hope you can understand.
It's been locked in my brain ever since.
I'm going to read this. We have not read these since 2021.
My heart is beating.
I think that's also an important thing to mention, is that I did kind of have another best friend at this time.
How did we forget?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was probably very, very difficult.
I think that was
Kelsey
actually
too.
The main thing,
agree.
which literally, how could we forget?
Yeah.
But I think that obviously people have multiple best friends, right? Like, there's no way that you're only friends with one person for the rest of your life. However, I think I was so stuck in the like, well, I'm her best friend.
Yeah.
Kind of
I probably didn't
moment.
Make it any easier either.
Yeah.
I think I probably very much flaunted it because I was in my honeymoon stage with this person.
1000%. And also she was very different from me. She was very outgoing and very loud. And like, you guys related on that aspect. Yeah. So that I think was flaunted more. And that put me in the position of like, well, she must like her better because there's more attention and, you know, whatever the case is. But that does play a huge part into it of like, your best friend now has somebody else that they call their best friend, that they're calling.
Like, it's normal to feel jealous about those things. Like, Kelsey kind of was becoming really close to people through content creation, and I was bored. I was jealous. I wouldn't admit it at the time, but it was making me really bitter, because that's also, as you get older, those things really don't feel as heavy. But when you're in your 20s, like, that's like fucking social suicide if your best friend gets another best friend, especially if you don't like that best friend.
And we were on Instagram now. At this point, we have Instagram. So like stories of you guys out, and I was never invited, and probably vice versa when I'm out with somebody and you're like, what the fuck? Why wasn't I invited? Or why didn't we hang out? Or, you know, whatever the case is. But that's such a real emotion and feeling.
Yeah.
And it
feels terrible.
And
now with social media, you see it. So it's like 10 times, it's like seeing your, you know, ex with their new partner.
You see it happening in real time. You're like, oh, what?
Social media makes it 10 times harder.
Yeah.
So I wrote Kelsey an email. Whatever, I'm just going to read it.
Okay. If I laugh, it's because I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. If I cry, it's because I'm crying. The title is, I hope you can understand. I know this seems so incredibly strange, archaic, and maybe even dramatic to be receiving an email from me. Truthfully, I'm not sure this is even the right way to handle the situation. However, something I've learned about myself over the years, you haven't learned anything, is that writing allows me to communicate my emotions in a far more organized and truthful way. So I'm writing. I have a lot to say, but I'm also not quite sure where to start. So I'm hoping writing will help me organize my thoughts. I went back and forth trying to figure out the best way to approach all of this. And the main reason I decided to write is because, like I said, I have a lot I want to unpack. Meeting up after not speaking for a bit and trying to dump all of this out causes me anxiety, and I'm not sure I would be able to approach it all in the best manner. I was worried about that one of two things would happen: that I may only give you 10% of the whole story out of fear of being quote unquote too blunt, and the vicious cycle of resentment would continue, or I would just end up exploding, because unfortunately that's how I tend to that's what I tend to do when I bottle things up for a while. This is me trying to avoid both of those evils. I want to preface this email with a few things. Number one, this is in no way an attack. I am simply just expressing how I feel. 2, I will be mentioning a few things that happened a while back, and I am sorry for that. I know that isn't always the most fair thing to do, but unfortunately, I made the mistake of not bringing them up sooner. And 3, I know I am not a perfect friend by any means, but I always try to give 100% of me to my friendships, sometimes to a fault. Please try to read this with an open heart and understand that although writing comes a bit easier to me, this is anything but easy to write.
Why am I literally about to cry?
Well, fucking don't. This year in particular, I have learned that I'm holding on to a lot of bitterness/resentment towards you and our friendship. This feeling came into play when you and I... Hold on, make sure Winston doesn't jump.
Not jump.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead, King. Make yourself comfortable. Go ahead. This year in particular, I have learned that I'm holding on to a lot of bitterness/resentment towards you and our friendship. This feeling came into play when you and I talked about your quote-unquote epiphany that you had about being a more positive person. You can't go up there.
What is happening?
You want to go up there? Okay. You're going to hurt yourself.
Is he going to like sit on top of the thing?
Yeah, he's going to try, but he can't do that.
No.
All right. Why don't you sit right there, King? Come on, buddy.
Big King.
Okay. When you came to me and expressed that, I immediately felt relief and happiness, but then there was a part of me that started feeling bitter, and it took me a while to realize why. You haven't always been the greatest friend to me. Prior to our conversation, you were pretty negative and you put me down quite a lot. It seemed like you always had something negative to say, whether it was about my body, what I chose to wear, what activity we were doing, or something I said. Sometimes I was able to brush it off by saying that's just how she is, but most of the time it would really upset me, especially because I felt like I would never put you down. Now, that is not to say that I haven't ever had fun or that every moment was negative. When you were in a good mood, I fucking loved hanging out with you. But that was exactly the thing, when you were in a good mood. Truthfully, I would feel a lot of anxiety before we would hang out because I wasn't sure what kind of mood you would be in that day. When you first moved to LA, I would go out of my way to do a lot to help you and Ian feel at home. You told me you wanted you and Ian to do more activities, so I would invite you guys to do everything and take you to as many things as I could. You wanted to meet new friends, so I would introduce you to everyone I knew. But unfortunately, there were a lot of times that you would come and be really negative. It even caused rifts in my other friendships because other people didn't like how you would treat them or myself. I really didn't like being in that position, and I constantly felt torn. It would make me feel even more uncomfortable when you would bring Ian into it as well. I can't tell you how many times we would be out and I would say something or be my normal quirky self and you would scoff, roll your eyes, and then make a look at Ian. It felt horrible and it made me feel insanely paranoid and defensive. A lot of times I would feel like you didn't want that you wanted the title of best friend, but you wouldn't really show up when I needed you. Oh, I forgot about this. When I was moving out of my apartment with my toxic ex, I needed you. I really needed my best friend there. I forgot about this. When I asked Ian why you weren't able to come, he told me you were busy with errands. It was a Saturday. I don't want to play the hypothetical game, but if that were you, I would have moved mountains to be there for you. You knew the most about my situation with my ex, and when you didn't show up, I was really hurt. Again, I know this was years ago, and I'm a jackass for finally bringing this shit up. I really don't like asking my friends for things, or anyone for that matter. And besides the move, there was only one other thing that I had asked for you, which was to grab Shane and I from the airport. I know you stayed home that night and never left. That really upset me. Honestly, I debated about texting you in the first place because unfortunately I had an idea that you wouldn't be able to come. But I figured, since we now live so close, that you would be able to. It's not the fact that you didn't come that upset me. It's the fact that you lied when I would have rather you said you didn't feel like it. I asked Kelsey to pick me up from the airport one time. And
I don't remember this.
I remember this. And Shane was like, you got to ask Kelsey. Like, they just changed their system of like, they got that lot. Where
the Uber. That's so annoying.
Yeah, it was like a pain in the ass. We were starving. One of us got sick. And I asked her and she told me that she had dinner with Ian that night. And I checked her location and she was home.
Sneaky.
I remember that.
I don't remember that though.
But you did tell me you ended up going to dinner, so I don't really know what happens, but I know in the moment I was upset about that.
Yeah.
I feel like I show up for you a lot. When you asked me to grab Arlo from a haircut, I said, absolutely, what time? Or to check on a package at your apartment, or drop something off at the post office, or shoot content for you on Fridays. I don't mean to list all these examples, and I know this is the incorrect way to do it. I'm just very frustrated. Now look, I was really proud of you when you made the promise to be more positive. You noticed something, you made a change, and you stuck with that. I don't ever want to say it's too late to change, because it isn't. However, the reason for my bitterness is because I feel like I was someone who dealt with the brunt of your negativity, and it was never acknowledged. Not only do I feel like it was never acknowledged, but I feel like over the years, I have given you 1,000% of everything I have, and you treat Instagram friends who don't even know you with more kindness than you have ever treated me. I know I'm not a perfect friend. I know I can be wildly annoying and stressed out and opinionated. I know I can let my emotions get the best of me and spread myself too thin, but I genuinely feel like I have given everything I have to our friendship over the years. I feel like I would ask you and Ian to hang out every chance I could. I feel like I would always show up for you, but unfortunately I felt like it wasn't reciprocated, and I started to take the hint. When you would say negative things to me or roll your eyes to Ian or not make as much of an effort or to make plans with me, I started to really think that maybe you don't want to be my friend. Again, I'm sorry for dropping this whole bomb at once. I hope you can understand. The only thing is, I don't have your second email. I have my next email, so you must have wrote something in between.
Oh, well.
You have it.
I must.
That took like many years for me to get to that point of writing it.
Oh gosh, it's long.
We go back and forth for a while. We're just reading the first two.
Okay, you want me to go?
Yeah, go.
I honestly couldn't tell you what I said, so I'm nervous. Christina, this is going to be long because I want to be as sure. Sorry, let me start over. Why am I nervous?
Because it's weird.
It's really weird. Okay. Christina, this is going to be long because I want to be sure to touch on what you said and also express my feelings. First off, thank you for sending this and airing out your feelings. I'm well aware it's not easy to do. I have had anxiety all week anticipating having this conversation because things haven't felt normal in a very long time. This is hard for me to write, as I'm sure yours was as well, so please bear with me. Like you said, none of this is an attack, and I want you to know this is all coming from my heart. I want to start by saying that I know I haven't always been the greatest friend, and unfortunately, I don't feel like you have been either. I know I had my fair share of mistakes and faults and was far from positive for a large portion of my life. I hope you know that although you received a lot of that negativity, it wasn't just you. Everyone in my life received it, and only growing up and maturing showed me how wrong and unfair that was to not only everyone around me, but to myself. There's always two sides to a story, and how you remember things may not be how I remember them. So I want to apologize for making you feel inferior or putting you down. Truthfully, I don't think I always realized I was doing it, but I realize it now, and I never intended to hurt you. I am very appreciative that you tried to invite Ian and I into your LA circle when we first moved here. I hope you know that. I am finding a hard time trying to express how I felt back then, but I want to be 100% honest. I didn't always feel welcome. I felt like sometimes you would just invite me or us because you felt like you had to, and because of that, I wasn't always comfortable. Of course, I always wanted to be invited, but I didn't want it to feel like a pity invite. Looking back, I may have taken that feeling and turned it against you instead of just talking about it. Truthfully, I don't remember why I didn't help you move out. I can't imagine that I just had a few errands to run and would skip helping you for that, but nevertheless, I know I should have been there, and I am so sorry. That one still gets me. I think part of me didn't want to go because at that point, and honestly still now, I felt like I was in this fight to be your best friend and I was losing.
It's good for the pod. Let it out.
Oh my God. It's so weird because we're so past it, but I like feel how I felt when I was writing this. Yeah. I know that sounds kind of pathetic and like a bad excuse. I feel like I was there for you with your ex as much as you would let me be, but also felt like you confided in others more than you did in me. I wish I could have been there to help you move out. I'm glad you brought up the airport situation because that's kind of the moment I feel like things changed for us. I can promise you I didn't lie. Ian and I had dinner plans, but then we ended up canceling them. I probably should have texted you and told you that they were canceled, but at that point, I had already told you I couldn't grab you, so I just didn't think of it. But you also asked me to grab you a few hours before you landed. I think you may have been in the air when you texted me. If you had given me more notice, such a bitch. I would have had made dinner plans or at least moved. I wouldn't have made dinner plans or at least moved them around, and I would have had no problem picking you up. But when you asked me last minute, that felt like I was expected to grab you. If I had asked you and you had plans or couldn't, that would be that. I don't know if you're holding on to it because you think I lied about having plans, and if so, I want you to know I didn't intend for it to come off that way. Okay. A little backstory. When I was first a content creator, I did this like collab. I designed a necklace with this brand. And so this is where this piece comes in. The collab necklace still breaks my heart, and it still hurts me to even discuss right now. I know why you didn't share it or buy it when I came out. We had this discussion and you acknowledged that you didn't go about it in the best way, as I acknowledged that I was sorry for making you feel bad in the first place. But what really hurt me is that you didn't even acknowledge it after the fact. You didn't share it or buy it or comment on it. It was just like it never happened in your eyes. And that was something I was so proud of at the time. I'll be honest, it crosses my mind every time you drop something on Woman Child, how bad it made me feel and how I wouldn't want you to feel that way about something you were so proud of.
Woman Child is a small brand that I launched during COVID, by the way. It's done now.
I didn't really comment on this when we discussed it the first time in the parking lot of Erewhon. So specific. Because I didn't think it was worth bringing up. But that night, I can remember being so hurt that you were telling them about Shane for the first time and telling them things I didn't even know about yet. You would make comments like, I was telling so-and-so this, and it made me feel bad that I was finding out these exciting moments after the fact when I had always hoped I'd be the first person you would go to with new or exciting news. So I definitely took it out on you, and I specifically remember one comment about your ass I said, and I know it was a dick move, and I apologize. Do you remember what it was?
We were at Chulita. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't read it in the email. And we were with our friends Erica and Janae, and it was about to be Shane's birthday, and they said, "What are you doing for Shane's birthday?" And I said, I got him a cake, and I put all of these little like asses on the candles. And Erica was like, "Your ass?" And I'm like, and then you said, "What ass?" And I was pissed.
Not happy.
I was not happy.
It's fucking rude.
It's like, I've been squatting, okay? Fuck you.
You have a nice butt.
I waited years for that. You guys stay. We're almost done. I feel like
to get into Instagram, I'm so hurt that you felt you needed to mute me 2 months ago. I wish you would have just brought up how you were feeling at the time. You know that Instagram is a big deal for me. And although I don't know 100% what I want my career to be, I know I want it to be involved with Instagram and social media. The fact that you muted me, oh my God, this is so dramatic. The fact that you muted me, quite frankly, kills me. Here I am working my ass off to pursue something that makes me really happy and excited, and I don't even have your support. Truthfully, girls on Instagram who I have met once or have never met are more supportive. I noticed you muted me or at least didn't watch any of my stuff, and it hurt me. And it hurts me when I see you comment on or reshare everyone else's stuff. I know you say you were my biggest hype woman, but I don't feel like you ever were. What really hurt me a while back was when you and I were out to eat and you asked me if I had social anxiety. Now I'm the first person to admit that I didn't care about meeting new people or making small talk because that just wasn't what I was interested in. But to actually ask me if I have social anxiety was so rude and made me feel like you didn't know me at all and that you were belittling the fact that I may not be as outgoing as you. I never brought it up and just brushed it off, but it still stings. I'm so dramatic though. It stings. Oh, I just feel like you don't know me very well anymore, and I don't feel like you've tried to get to know me. I say this lightly because I know COVID didn't allow us to hang out. Whatever. If you were around this year, you would know that my entire mood / life outlook has drastically changed. That I'm a much happier person. I'm so much more confident, and I try to better myself every day and make good choices. You would know how excited I am about being on social media and that I've gone outside of my comfort zone and met so many new people that I can now call friends, and that now I enjoy making that small talk that I used to hate. You move directly across the street and I never see you. Anytime recently that we have all hung out,
I've been the one to ask. I can't remember the last time you asked to hang out, just us, or the last time we hung out one-on-one that wasn't a quick walk around the block. It makes me really sad because living next door to each other should have been the best times of our lives. I know you're busy, as am I, but our friendship is important to me, so I would still try to reach out and see if you wanted to go for a walk or hang out and watch a movie or do literally anything just so we could spend a few minutes of quality time together, and I don't feel like I really got any of that from you. I'm not sure if it's because of the resentment you have about me or our past together, or if you truly just don't enjoy hanging out with me anymore. I was actually really sad on my birthday this year. You had posted on Instagram in the morning a few times on your story, and you didn't text me until 3 p.m. I know you were snowboarding, but if I weren't around on your birthday, I would make sure the first thing I did in the morning was text or call you. Some people don't really care about birthdays, but I'm a big birthday girl, and that says a lot to me. Honestly, I've been feeling that I am second best in your eyes for a while. And at this point, it may be true. I really am sorry for ever making you feel bad or feel like I didn't appreciate you or your friendship. That wasn't the best friend title I was after. It was actually being your best friend.
Jesus Christ, I need a cocktail.
I remember that last line. It wasn't the best friend title I was after. It was being your best friend.
I mean, I think I know for me, something that I am not good at is all of those things were true in the sense of when I noticed I had resentment, I went out of my way to let it be known.
Yeah.
I muted her. I didn't support what she did. And that's not how you do things, because then I was just stooping to something that I was getting mad about in the first place. And realistically, what should have happened then is I should have just had a conversation. And I think we all tend to do that where it's like, oh, if you go low, I go lower. And that's absolutely what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And not having your friends support your stuff feels like shit. And regardless of, especially if you haven't had a conversation, it's one thing if two people just grow apart, but when there hasn't been a conversation and there hasn't really been any closure, but you're still kind of keeping each other at bay, but then also not fully supporting each other, it feels like frenemies. And at that point we were frenemies.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think we were not rooting for each other's success. And again, the easiest thing, we go back and forth a bajillion times, by the way.
And they're long emails.
And then we end up meeting up at your place.
Yeah.
And the easiest thing that we could have done is stop being friends. Because at this point, we were living two different versions of what we thought this relationship was going to be. You were doing something very different with work. I was too. You had different friends. I had different friends. And I remember when we met in person, we talked about everything. We talked about high school. We talked about college. And while some people are like, oh, it's not good to bring up the past, I needed to. I know that that conversation that we had, though, I think is why we're still friends. Yeah.
Because the emails, we went back and forth. I think we wrote them, very well. And we were very respectful. But it's so different when you can be face to face and actually talk about and see the person's emotion and see their body language and just see what it was that really bothered them, even though some of that stuff was 10 years ago. I don't remember, you know what I mean? But it had to be done. And I think it's so important to note that this wasn't her versus me or me versus her. So in friendships, when you grow apart, we were both at fault for so many things. And I think understanding, in the moment, I didn't realize half the stuff that I was doing, and you didn't realize half the stuff you were doing. But obviously, friendships are work and two-way street. And it's if you're willing to understand me and I'm willing to understand you, there's no reason why we can't be friends.
Yeah.
But if one person isn't willing to change or to understand or to just work on giving the other person a little bit more of what they need, it's like a relationship.
Yeah.
Sometimes my relationship with Ian is 90-10. Sometimes
Totally.
it's 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40. You know what I mean? It's never always 50-50 split. Sometimes one person has to put in more, just depending on
where they
are and what is going on. And I think we had just lost that we kind of thought that we were we're both not putting in 50-50. You're not putting it in, I'm not putting it in, kind of thing.
And I feel like I what I still work on this, even in my own relationship. We all do this because Shane does this too, where if I'm like, hey, this thing hurt me, the worst thing that you can do is like, if that wasn't your intention, there's no need to get defensive. Mm-hmm. But I am a very defensive person, even when I'm like, I know people say like, oh, if you're defensive, you're lying. I'm defensive all the time. I'm defensive if I'm telling the truth. If I'm not telling the truth, I am defensive about everything. That's just how I am. But what happens is when you're defensive, you show that person that what they're feeling is invalid. Kelsey can come to me and say, I'm really hurt. And I didn't mean to hurt her, but that shouldn't be the crux of the conversation. Something, regardless, is hurting her. And I have to change something so that she doesn't feel that way anymore, regardless of what my intention is. Mm-hmm. And I think I was always defensive in the sense that like, well, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. And rather than trying to figure out like, okay, what can I do differently so you don't feel that way? And what can she do differently so I don't feel this way? And also, let me be very clear. We didn't like sit down and have this conversation and then we are like what we are now.
Yeah.
It took a really long time. I mean, I can only speak for me, but I felt weird for a really long time.
Yeah.
And like there was such a peace that we got everything out.
It was so much lighter.
I knew that it would never like, because sometimes it was so bad for me that she would do something and I would like go back to high school in my brain of like something else that she did. Like I was holding on to a lot. It was so much lighter in the sense that I knew that I was never going to feel like I needed to say anything again, but it felt like acquaintances for a little bit.
But I think right after that conversation, we both put in a little bit more effort too, to make sure that we were hanging out and like spending quality time together and just making sure we were good.
Yes.
That it was weird for a bit, but then because we were both putting in the effort, it ended up just like stop feeling weird.
We had to re-become friends as different people and stop using it as a crutch that we've been best friends in the high school. That needed to go out of the window. Like we needed to relearn who each other was. And I think once we had that conversation, because the resentment was gone, whenever Kelsey would do something, I would always assume the worst. I would always, if she was rude or dismissive, I'd say, she's mad at me. She's this. Whereas once we were able to get everything out and have a different level of respect, I was able to look at Kelsey more like a human in the sense that if we have a day and she is off or sad, I have this piece that it might have nothing to do with me. She's just in a bad mood because life, and vice versa. And like, instead of always assuming, oh, it's got to be an attack towards me, it's she's mad at me. Now we just know like, no, we're two people and sometimes we have bad days and like, that's just how it's going to be. And you kind of lose that, that immediate wall that you put up when you're around somebody that you don't communicate well with.
I also think this obviously just comes with maturing and getting older. But after we had that conversation, like Christina has so many friends, just she's always with somebody different. If she's out, there's so many people that she's speaking to and whatever. She has a small group of really close friends, but she knows a lot of people. And in the past, no matter who it was, whether it was somebody that was her best friend or somebody she just met, I would immediately be jealous. And I would immediately be like, oh my God, she's replacing me. Now, obviously we're older and we're more mature, but I don't feel any type of way, no matter who she's with, what she's doing.
And it
nothing.
Shows.
Yeah.
And it shows. It definitely like, yeah, it's you kind of you when you learn to work things out and you have a different respect for each other, you're able to give each other the benefit of the doubt more and know that like things aren't at the end of the day. I think we both know now we would never do anything to intentionally hurt one another.
No.
Whereas before, if we indirectly hurt each other, we would assume it was on purpose.
It was on purpose, yeah.
And sometimes it probably was. I know I probably did things absolutely on purpose to upset you. Mm-hmm. But now we know, like, if anything were ever to bother me, I know for a fact it wasn't done on purpose. Yeah. And that's like a really great peace of mind to have.
And it's also, we know now that like you would, which I actually thinking about, I don't think we fought since that day.
No.
But knowing that if there was something that I did do that you felt bad about, I know you would just say it to me now. You wouldn't hold on to it.
Yes.
And so I think getting to that point too in a friendship of just knowing that like that communication is so important that no matter what, I'm not going to hold on to this. I'm just going to come out and say, hey, this bothered me, or you made me feel this way, is such a piece to know that like, no matter what, you can tell me and I can tell you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the place that you want to be at in any friendship. You never want to feel like you can't tell somebody how you feel or how they're making you feel, or, you know, that they did something to upset you. Like that took us a while to get to, but now we work together, and we would not be able to do this, work together, be as close as we are if we hadn't had that conversation. And it was just something where we had both hurt each other. We both weren't being the best friends, but we wanted to be friends.
Yeah. So this is your sign that you can go from best friends to frenemies to enemies to acquaintances to best friends to employees.
Well, you're my boss.
Yeah, but we're, you know,
coworkers.
Yeah, coworkers. I also think it's very important that we did this after so much time.
Yeah,
that like nothing felt like it was like re-bringing it up, or like we're so over it.
I definitely got emotional reading the emails because like,
you remember how you felt.
Yeah, that was like a moment in time, and I just also seeing the things that like really bothered me is like,
well, they were valid.
They were, but now also I'm like, okay, I'm a little dramatic, but you know, it's
normal.
It's emotional to relive, but to know that like I don't feel any different now.
Friendship fallouts are normal. And also keep in mind too, this isn't your sign that like every friendship fallout is meant to be mended. That's also a hard thing. I definitely have fallouts with friends that have not been mended. And I think using discernment to figure out,
you have to know when to walk away and when to put in the work.
And sometimes walking away doesn't mean that person isn't good. It's just that person was there for, you know, that season of your life, and you guys outgrew each other. And Kelsey and I had so much at stake, you know, like that was the question of like, we're not friends that just started being friends that year. Like we had so much history. I don't have any, like she's the closest thing to a sister that I've ever had. She knows more about me than anybody. Like there was so much at stake that it was worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. But there's not many people that I probably would have just laid that to rest or let it fizzle out. So it's also, but both people have to be willing, or all three people, or how many people.
Yeah, the group.
Has to all collectively decide to do that.
Yeah.
Well, this was therapeutic.
I know, I'm sweating, but
I am too. It's so hot. We have to shut off all the fans in here, by the way, so it doesn't make any goddamn noise. And we were supposed to record this podcast like 3 hours ago, and it was cold, and I have a hoodie on, and I'm fucking schwitzing. That was also just like a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
But I hope if you're going through any friend breakups or whatever it may be, that A, you know that it's normal and it's happens all the fucking time. And that B, if you want to get through it, you can. And you just got to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
Thanks for unpacking this on a podcast. This is not an easy thing to rehashing your insecurities and your faults.
Yeah.
Is a weird fucking thing. So thanks for being so willing to be on the.
Thanks for
that. Also shows how much we've grown too. That we're able to like
sit here and talk about it. Yeah, no, 1000%. I think it's just so important to note like the growth on both of our ends separately. Yeah, because like yes, we've grown as friends and in our relationship, but separately we're
different people,
so far ahead than where we were, especially even when we wrote these emails. Like, and it's just you have to want to put in the work to work on yourself, to grow yourself, to be a better friend, and then you have to want to put in the work with your friend to make your friendship work. And
that's the tea.
That's it.
Well, we love you guys. I gotta take these dogs outside. They've been sitting here sweating their dicks off, so I'm gonna go take them potties. But we love you guys. Thank you to Kelsey for being our first guest.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on Thursday.